This was no suicide mission, but death was the likely outcome for 6 young Japanese submariners on a mission to sink ships in Sydney Harbour in May 1942. World War II began when Britain declared war on Germany for invading Poland.
It is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of the persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war.
There was no immediate threat to Australia, yet many Australians felt compelled to travel to the other side of the world to fight with their ally Britain. 2 years later, war came closer to Australia when Japan attacked America's naval base at Pearl Harbor. And the British Empire in Malaya. The British surrendered the island fortress of Singapore. 4 days later, the Japanese bombed Darwin and other northern Australian towns. War had come to Australia. Embattled Britain was unable to offer support, so Australia turned to America for help, offering a safe base for fighting the Japanese. Australia now looks to America, declared Australia's new Prime Minister John Curtin.
Men and women of Australia, we are at war with Japan.
According to United States General Douglas MacArthur, Japan had no plans to invade Australia. The spoils are not worth the risk, he said. The Americans settled into Sydney. The Japanese followed. Sunday, May 31, 1942. Sydney is unaware that 5 giant Japanese submarines have assembled 7 kilometres offshore. 3 each carry a midget submarine. The other 2 each carry a spy plane. Spy pilot Susumu Ito reports an American battleship in the middle of Sydney Harbour. He was mistaken. The ship was the cruiser USS Chicago, a smaller target. At nightfall, 3 two-man midget subs are launched, each armed with 2 torpedoes. All 3 are slowed by high winds and rough seas. Midget M27 arrives first and enters the harbour through a gap in the boom net. Seconds later, it collides with the pile light at George's Head. It backs away. The propellers tangle in the net. The bow rises above the surface. A night watchman notices, but for 2 hours, no one believes him. Next to arrive is Midget M24. Rounding Bradley's Head, USS Chicago's stern comes into view. Crew on Chicago and an Australian minesweeper open fire. M24 dives to avoid damage. Meanwhile, at George's Head, experts agree that the metal object stuck in the net is a Japanese submarine. A Navy patrol boat drops depth charges, but they fail to explode. To avoid capture, M27's crew blow themselves up. There is little doubt now that Sydney is under attack. The third midget, M22, arrives hours late. It is rammed by a patrol boat. M22 crash dives. Depth charges damage the bow cage. Skipper Matsuo waits quietly on the bottom while M24 prepares to attack. M24 is now astern of Chicago. The first torpedo misses Chicago, but sinks HMAS Kuttabul, an old wooden ferry moored at the wharf. The blast kills 19 Australian and 2 British seamen sleeping on board. The second torpedo also misses Chicago and goes harmlessly aground on Garden Island. M24 leaves the harbour. Chicago also leaves. After waiting over 4 hours, M22 attempts to sink the Australian cruiser HMAS Canberra. The first torpedo jams in the bent bow cage. The second torpedo also jams. M22 retreats. A patrol boat spots them hiding in Taylor's Bay. It isn't the depth charges that kills the crew. Matsuo shoots his sailor, then shoots himself. At first light on the 1st of June, the Battle of Sydney Harbour has ended. The 4 dead Japanese submariners are cremated with full military honours. Their ashes are returned to their families in Japan. Susumu Ito, the spy pilot who flew over Sydney before the raid, commented,
オーストラリアはイギリスの在任の流刑地である、流刑地であるというふうに思われていたけれども、なかなかやるじゃないかと。どうも矛先が鈍るなと。
In 2006, amateur divers found the wreck of M24, 20 kilometres north of Sydney. The mother subs were waiting in the south. Why did M24 go north? Was the sea too rough and the wind too strong to go south? There was no recovery. Were they overcome by chlorine fumes from batteries? Did they run out of battery power? The failure of all 3 midgets meant that 6 brave men never made it home. Many decades later, Japan, Australia, the United States and Great Britain are all friends.